World geography. Europe. European Union. Here are the learning objectives. 1. Following World War II, what was the purpose behind the formation of a common market in Europe? 2. Describe the conditions a country must meet if it wants to become a member of the European Union. 3. List the benefits of a common market. 4. What are some of the differences pulling nations apart in the European Union? 5. Describe Europe's sovereign debt crises. Introduction. Basic facts. The European Union, or the EU, it is a supranational organization of 28 member countries. The term supra means over or above. Therefore, the European Union is an organization that stands above the governments of its member nations. However, each member of the EU still remains a sovereign country. The European Union has open borders, and the countries share a common currency. Formation of the European Union. Centripetal, centrifugal. Due to its unique geography, Europe has several distinct cultural regions. Throughout its history, centripetal forces have often brought Europeans together, but more often than not, centrifugal forces that pulled them apart from one another. The European Union was formed to unite countries that had been torn apart by the centrifugal force of World War II. Coal and steel community. Not long after World War II, in the early 1950s, French Foreign Minister Robert Schuman, he suggested that France, Germany, and other European countries that they work together to manage their coal and steel production. His idea was that if countries were cooperating with one another in the commercial sector and making money, then they would be less likely to make war on each other. Coal and steel community. Following Schuman's idea, in 1952, 6 countries ratified a treaty that formed the European Coal and Steel Community. This created a common market for the commodities of coal and steel. Commodities are goods for which there's a demand, usually a high demand, but it doesn't really matter who produces it. Common markets require countries to reduce or remove the trade barriers between them. Trade barriers include things like tariffs, and tariffs are taxes on the commodities that cross national boundaries. Here's a map of the original coal and steel community members. Economic community. From the coal and steel community, Europeans moved forward, and in 1958, they created the first European Economic Community, or the EEC. And this removed trade barriers for all kinds of goods, beyond just coal and steel. The EEC came to be known as the Common Market, and more countries joined. Here in green, you can see the members of the original coal and steel community, and then the blue is the members that joined the first common market. European Union formation. Several years later, in 1992, 12 common market countries decided to go a step further, and they formed the European Union, or the EU. And this is important. The goal of the European Union is to promote peace and prosperity through economic cooperation and growth. European Union today. Copenhagen Criteria. Lots of countries have joined the European Union, and it's now composed of 28 sovereign member states. And in order to join the European Union, a country has to adhere to the 1993 Copenhagen Criteria. They have to meet the following conditions. Nations have to be democracies. They have to respect human rights and the rule of law. Nations must have a functioning and a competitive market economy, a free enterprise economy. And nations must accept the obligations of European Union membership. And here's an overall view of the members of the European Union today. Economic cooperation. Common market benefits. The common market unites the European Union and it creates benefits for the citizens. For instance, when goods flow freely across borders, people have more choices about what to buy. They can buy things that are imported. And the elimination of tariffs or taxes on European goods flowing across borders lowers prices for the consumer. European workers themselves, if they can't find a job in their home country, then they can travel to any other EU member country to find work. The euro. Many members of the European Union adopted a common currency back in 2002 called the euro. Some countries chose to keep their own national currency. The euro, though, makes it easier to travel and trade across Europe. Trade bloc. European Union members have created what's known as a powerful trade bloc by joining their economies together. A trade bloc's a group of countries that act together, and in that way they can increase their influence over world trade. Economic differences. European Union budget. The Western European members of the European Union, they're wealthier than the members in Central and Eastern Europe. This is due to historical differences. The European Union spends large sums of money on infrastructure projects in these poor member nations. And some Western Europeans, they object to so much money being spent outside their own immediate geographical area. Wages in manufacturing. Because the countries in Western Europe are wealthier, wages and living costs are higher there. And in response, some Western European businessmen, they've moved their manufacturing plants to the poor European Union nations, where the costs are lower and you can pay the workers less. Workers in Western Europe, they worry about losing their jobs to these poor European Union nations. Worker migration. Workers in poor European countries, they often move to the richer ones in search of jobs. And the workers in Western Europe, they fear that too many of these newcomers will drive down wages for everyone. Political cooperation. European Union government. The European Parliament, it's the largest European Union political body. It has 700 members that are directly elected. The main job of Parliament is to pass European laws that deal with things like transportation and the environment. Each country must carry out European Union mutual decisions made by the Parliament, even when it doesn't agree with a given policy. Of course, countries continue to make independent decisions in the areas of national defense and foreign affairs. Nationalism makes cooperation among nations difficult. People still feel closer to their individual country than they do. They feel more like, French people feel more like members of the country of France than they feel like members of the European Union. Sovereign debt crises. Economic recession. From 2008 to 2012, there was a worldwide economic recession, and in Europe there was a sovereign debt crisis. And this sovereign debt crisis is a financial crisis that made it difficult for some countries in the Eurozone to repay or refinance their government debt without the assistance of outside parties. Because of economic mismanagement and overspending, countries like Greece, Ireland, Portugal, Spain, they struggled to balance their budgets, and they had to develop an austere or a very government budget where they didn't spend too much money. These countries continue to experience high rates of unemployment and declining tax revenues. The end. Thank you for listening.